Hello folks, welcome to episode 33 of GingerLion's modded Minecraft Let's Play. If you recall last time I had finished setting up my nuclear reactors, just want to show you a couple of refinements out here. First, I gave myself a chunk loader so that this would be loaded at all times. Second, I set up two more advanced information panels, one set up connected to the MFSU and one to the CESU down below, so that I know that there's power available for my thermometers. You'll notice this is filled up and my reactor shut off. It's time for us to begin the process of transporting power out of this system. So, how are we going to do that? We are going to use these Lapotron crystals that I created. I only need one at the moment, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to this export bus, and I'm going to tell it that it is responsible for exporting empty... Oop, doesn't look like they're completely empty. That's a problem. Let me see why they're not empty. Let's see, this one appears to be completely empty. This one is not. Okay, that's fine. Let's come over here and reconfigure this. This now has some power in it. I'm not quite sure what's going on. Just walking around seems to be changing the power in these Lapotron crystals. So let's go ahead and put a couple of them in my inventory. These are all currently at zeros. This one seems to have climbed. Those are still at 0. Not all of them. Let's get over here quick. While one of these is still at 0, I want to put it in there. There. Now, it should export a Lapotron crystal immediately into this MFSU. Good. Now I've got that configured the way I want it to be. Now, we need to wait until it is completely filled up. You'll notice, by the way, that drained this below the 100% mark, which immediately kicked all 3 nuclear reactors back on, and they're busy trying to recharge this, despite the fact that it's discharging. Now, this is still at 100%. Good. We're not having any problems here. So now, I want to wait until this crystal charges 100%. I want it to be completely full. Doesn't take all that long, you'll notice. It's nice because we're draining 10 million EU out of this system, and we're doing it very quickly. Let's just give it that couple more seconds that it's going to take to reach all the way up to a full 10 million EU drained out. And then we're going to pull this out. You'll notice immediately the system imports one more. Now what I want to tell this is that it's allowed to pull out completely full crystals. So basically what I've done is I've set up a system by which empty crystals are dropped in here and full ones are pulled out. Good. Now, looks like we have some partially charged ones. Those are going to be a bit of a problem, but that's fine. So now, we want to head back to our base. Now, in preparation for what we're about to do, I made a couple of minor changes over here on floor 41. I'd like to show them to you. I set up each one of these with 2 transformer upgrades. You notice that what that transformer upgrade does is it allows these to accept the highest tier of energy available, which is 8192, which is EV. Now I put 2 in here even though it doesn't completely need them. All of these are now set up that way. And I've already made MFSUs, 3 of them in this particular case. I'm going to pull all 3 of them out. And glass fiber cable. What I'm going to do, now let me get an export bus. I'd like a precision export bus, please. While we're at it, I'd like a precision import bus. Let me check the it's currently crafting the CPUs that it needs. Okay. Let's grab that export bus. Let's grab the import bus. And let's grab some cable. most of you can probably see where I'm going at this point. Now, there is one unusual thing that I'm about to do. I'm going to recommend that the rest of you never do this, but I find myself in a situation where I do not need these geothermal generators at all. In fact, the machine casings that these geothermal generators are made of are more valuable to me than the generators themselves. And so I'm going to make the unusual step of breaking these with a pickaxe. What that gets me back is generators, which I might find useful at some point in time, as opposed to the geothermal generators, which I'm basically done with. So I'm going to tear these completely out. Thunderstorm going on outside, that's always interesting. And I'm also going to completely remove all of this. I waste myself a little bit of lava in this process. I could probably have tried to figure out how to drain all this lava off into a tank of some kind and return it, but right now lava is a relatively common resource for me, so I'm not going to worry about it. Tear all this down. This is going to give me some space back here that I don't necessarily need, but you never know. I might need to put in some more processing machinery or something back here. And finally, right up till there. Now, once again, breaking this, and I don't want this copper cable anymore, because the voltage that I'm going to be using is much higher than copper cable can handle. It can only handle 128 EU per tick. And I'm about to be switching to high voltage. Not extreme voltage, but high voltage. I could use extreme voltage, because the cabling that I've decided to go with is the glass fiber. Again, I don't want to lose any power, so I happen to know that glass fiber cable will not lose power on distances up to 40 blocks. And I only made 20 cable. You'll notice I have 7 left in my hand, so that shouldn't be an issue. So now what are we going to do? Well, I am going to set up... what's the best way to do this? I think I'm going to need at some point to break this connection here, but I am going to set up an MFSU right... I think I'm going to do it back here just a little bit. I'll show you why in just a moment. I have an MFSU, and I'd like it to be pointed that way. Good. Now all of its power is going to feed into that line. And frankly, I would like several more MFSUs behind it, all lined up. What this will allow me to do is, if I feed power into this MFSU, it'll all end up in this one until it's full. That's absolutely perfect for me. Now, I wish to drain power out of these Lapotron crystals. To do that, you need to put the Lapotron crystals in the bottom of the storage unit. So I'm going to export full Lapotron crystals here. Make sense? Good. Now, let me see if I can touch that. Good. Now let me grab the crystals that have a certain amount of power in them but aren't full. And let me grab one completely empty crystal. And I am going to, let's see, the top should work. I'm going to import from here any completely empty crystal. See what I'm doing here? I'm putting full ones in the bottom. As soon as they're drained, I'm pulling them out the top and feeding them back into my storage system, which I have set up at the other end. So, what's happening here? We're feeding full ones in, and we're getting empty ones out. Now, I want to empty these partially emptied ones, so I'm going to be a little lazy, and I'm going to check to see that it works. Doesn't look like it's pulling out the top like I wanted it to. So, let me break this connection, and I'll put it on the side. I already have that bus pre-configured now. Let me wrench it around to point in the correct direction. And let's connect the cables. I don't really like the cables being above here. So let me switch them to being back in the wall. That's cleaner by my standards. Bink. Now, it should pull that out. Good. That's what I wanted to see. Let's get these partials drained off. Now, all of these are empty. That's what I like to see. Now, this one, partially drained. Let's go ahead and completely refill this one. And that one's completely full, and that one's nearly completely full. If they're completely full, and they're in my storage system, eventually they'll get put in here and discharged. If they were partially discharged, they wouldn't necessarily do so. So, what do I have now here? I have a process by which Lapotron crystals are charged over in my age by my nuclear reactor. They're fed in here, and they're used to run all this machinery that I've already got configured and connected. Now, let me just... I don't really like the cable being there, so let's go ahead and remove this cable. Good. Now, I have enough room for 3 more MFSUs if I decide to build them and connect them here. But at the moment, I have 40 million, 80 million, 120 million EU worth of power storage right here connected to my machines. That's automatically being filled by my 3 nuclear reactors. There we are. Now that is a successful build in terms of removing power from the nuclear reactors and delivering them to my tools. So somewhere around here, on one of these here walls, there it is now, we have reactor control display boards done. There are basically 2 things that we have left. And I'm going to leave automated fuel reprocessing, and I'm going to add removal of spent fuel. Let me just get that first line right. Removal of spent fuel, automated fuel reprocessing, and I'm going to put this back on the board. Full reactor automation. There we are, folks. Those are the 3 steps that are left before I feel that we're completely done building our nuclear reactor. So, let me go actually back and take a look at the reactor itself and see how things are going. Here we are. Here's our nuclear reactor. Our MFSU is now completely empty. You'll notice that's leading to a slight fill problem here. I may have to produce a little bit of a power bypass, but nonetheless, we're not using a huge amount of power to keep these thermometers active. I think for the moment, I'm going to let this be and see how well it works out. We still have a process by which we are loading crystals in and taking them out. Let me take a look at... We have 2 full crystals in the system and 12 empties, which means that we have plenty of room, effectively, for each 10 of those crystals. Let me make sure. Yep, they each hold 4 million. This MFSU holds 40 million. For each 10 of those crystals, we can empty one of these completely. For each 10 transmitted, we can fill one completely on the far side. So, we have a process of getting power out. I am going to go off camera and do a little bit of construction, building myself a little bit of a building to surround these 3 nuclear reactors, and hopefully I may very well be gone long enough for these timers to run out. 4 hours and 37 minutes. My actual intent is that the next time I come back on camera, it will be to show you the process of unloading the fuel rods out of these reactors and handling the reprocessing of those, though something may come up in between that will that'll bring me back on camera otherwise. You'll know in just a minute. Hello, folks. So, I guess I wasn't going to be able to do what I had promised. It's going to be a lot longer than I thought. So, let me just show you what I've got going on here. I now have all three of these MFSUs filled. Notice there's a Lapotron crystal in here. It's feeding all the energy that's required to keep all these machines running and doing all the things they're doing. And I have a full Lapotron crystal in here and another one being charged. I'm slightly worried about my nuclear reactor shutting down for lack of things to do. So, what I've decided to do is request 1,000 diamonds. Now, my crafting system is going to pulverize up a bunch of coal, turn it into coal balls, compress it, do all the things that are necessary. So first we're going to get this to run at its maximum capacity with 8 overclockers in it. I actually think I may increase the number of overclockers I have in some of these at some point, but that's fine. I figure this will utilize the system. It'll draw as much energy as I can reasonably draw. You know, my ore washing plants are continuing to function because I'm continuing to mine, so I'm continuing to get uranium and crush it. So, I just wanted to show you that. Actually, why don't I go show you the nuclear reactor while we're at it? Doo-doo. As you can see, I did a little bit of work on layout here. I decided to use mossy stone bricks, which I made using a fluid transposer. Mossy stone bricks. Come on, where are you? Right here. The recipe for mossy stone bricks is to put some stone bricks in a fluid transposer. It takes a chunk of power and a good chunk of time, but that's fine. And I used these fancy obsidian bricks, which are a Tinker's Construct item. They're made by putting obsidian bricks in with a chisel, which I have. And that's made by using obsidian the same way. I think it looks relatively fancy and nice, so I did it, and I laid out a little bit of a path here. As you can tell, I've been spending time. Notice I got about 3 hours left, and like I said, I was worried about the MFSU filling up. So yeah, here's my nuclear reactor chamber. All the reactors have been placed up on pedestals. I dug all the dirt up out of here and replaced it. So, there you are. There's the layout of my reactors in my reactor room. As you can see, they're still ticking down. Plenty of time left to go. And I will see you a little bit later. Hello, folks. So as you can see by this countdown, we're about a minute and a half away from my nuclear reactors running out of fuel. So, I want to show you a couple of minor changes that I've made while I've gone. First of all, I put in lights in this room because I found that despite it being a bright age and despite the floor being yellow with X's, there were mobs spawning. So, fixed that. Next, I noticed that power was not getting through the MFSU down to this CESU. Sorry, this MFE that I had down here. So what I did was I added another MV transformer, and a cable this way. What this does is the power that, if I had just put a fiber cable here, what would have happened is power would have come out of the bottom of the MFSU, through here, up, and back in, and it would have created a circle. And while I'm not sure that that's a problem, it doesn't sound like a good idea to me. So, I put in this. It acts as sort of a one-way gate, and it guarantees that if there's power coming from the nuclear reactor or power coming from the MFSU, it will make it down here into my power storage system, which will allow there to be power for my thermal monitors. So, there we go. We're coming up on shutdown. And we just watch this happen. Watch the thermal monitors down at the bottom. You'll notice that as soon as... shut down... shut down. 2 of them are down. The third one's 15 seconds away. So, I am going to go replace this hole in the floor, fix that, patch that back up as it were, and I'm going to switch my outfit, because now it's time for the next thing, which is automating the refueling of these reactors. There I am in my suit. Now, as each one of these reactors completes, what happens is the uranium fuel rods become depleted uranium fuel rods. I pull one out, it's going to be replaced like that. But what I'd really prefer is that this bus pull them all out. Now, as soon as it gets the message, which should be right about now, it will pull out all the depleted uranium fuel rods and replace them with regular fuel rods. So this is automated refueling of my reactor, or my reactors in this particular case. Just a moment. There we go. They get pulled out, and the ME system automatically fills up the blank spots with uranium fuel rods. Let me finish this on the third one, and then I'm going to show you what we're going to do with these. I just like to watch the first time and make sure that everything gets pulled out and replaced successfully. The reason that we are working so diligently to make sure that this is only set up to pull this out, I don't want it to pull out my heat vents or my heat exchangers or anything else, which could theoretically leave the reactor in an unstable state. So, if I come back out here and take a look, we've now got 5 hours and 32 minutes left and power ticking out. Also, it's interesting to note that of my crystals, I now have 3 fully charged ones sitting spare, and I'll show you, because I'm going back there anyway. There we go. And over here, we have 3 completely filled MFSUs and an almost full Lapotron crystal sitting here keeping them all topped off. That means that all this machinery can run at its completely thoroughly overclocked states, and all will be well. Now, the next thing that I intend to do, let me just show you the uses. The only use for a depleted uranium fuel rod, other than putting it back in a breeder reactor, which I don't intend to do at this point, is to centrifuge it to produce tiny piles of plutonium, uranium-238, which we already have lots of, and iron dust. Let me go over here and show you. If we look at uranium, we have lots of this U-238. We have almost no U-235. Why is that? Because nuclear fuel the recipe of which is enriched uranium nuclear fuel. The recipe involved 3 tiny piles of uranium and 6 piles of uranium-238. If you look at your uranium processing cycle from your ore, which we run through a rock crusher to get crushed uranium ore, we then run it through a ore washing plant to get purified crushed uranium ore. This gets us 2 and 5. We use 3 and 6. This is why we have a large leftover of uranium-238 and are completely out of uranium-235. Now, once again, let's go back to our existing spent fuel rod. If I process it, I get back 4 of my 6 U-238, which I have lots of, but that's fine, and I get 1 tiny pile of plutonium. What's that useful for? Well, if I combine 9 of them, they make plutonium, and if I combine 3 of those, so 27 total, I get some MOX nuclear fuel, which and there's very little else that I can do with it. I can make RTG fuel, but for the moment that's not useful to me. If I use this, I can can it to make a MOX fuel rod, which I can put in my reactor just like it is right now, and use it. Now, there are other ways that I can use it. Turns out that if you heat the reactors excessively, you can get more power out of a MOX fuel rod. At the moment, I'm not willing to take that risk. Again, I'm running an extremely safe nuclear reactor. But once I use them up, I get this depleted MOX fuel rod, which if I process it, gives me back all 3 of the plutonium I put into it, and a tiny pile of plutonium. So basically, if I make a MOX fuel rods and use them up, will get all my plutonium back plus some. all my iron, and I will end up using up my massive supply of uranium-238. So for me, this is a very winning scenario. This allows me to get much more life out of the uranium I'm working with. So what's important is that I pass into the thermal centrifuge, just make sure we're right so we don't make a mistake here, pass into the this thermal centrifuge, the depleted uranium fuel rods. So I'm going to tell this that this is the other thing it is allowed to work on right now. Notice it loaded in 62 of them. I'm going to take the last one out of my inventory, put it in here, come over here, and it'll load that in too, 63. It's going to work to centrifuge all of this uranium, get me back my uranium and make my plutonium. So, as soon as the centrifuge completes, there are a couple of things that I want to do. First of all, this iron dust, correct, I can use it to make Invar, or I can smelt it into iron. So let's see, I wonder if I can just smelt it in a normal furnace. Let me go and check. I have furnaces right here, connected to the network. What happens if I put this in here? It's going to go ahead and make iron out of it. Good. So I am going to modify this logistics pipe and tell it that iron dust, if it ever finds iron dust in the system, go ahead and ask for it, smelt it up. There we go. So now all of the iron dust is going to be turned back into iron. The reason that I do that is this. When you use up, to make one of these fuel rods, the recipe for one of these fuel rods is, come on. Oh, well, the empty fuel rod, which is what I fill with uranium to make a uranium fuel rod. So the recipe for this is an empty fuel rod, which is made from a plate of iron, which is made from either, oops, I got the wrong one, just a moment, which is made from an iron ingot. So basically I got all my iron back. That's a good advantage. And now I'm going to come over here and get my plutonium. I've already got 4. I need 9 for my first piece, but that's fine. And I'm going to teach this how to make large piles of plutonium, so that I don't have to do it by hand. And then I'm going to request one. It's not going to be able to do it until it's got 9 of them available, but it's going to sit here and wait while the centrifuge down below goes through its process of centrifuging out the plutonium out of my spent fuel rods. See, it takes a little while, but it ticks along, and it'll work. Eventually it'll get all of that done. Let me go take a look at what the job is right now. It needs 3 more tiny piles of plutonium, and it's waiting for them. Now it needs 2. As soon as this is done, it's just going to take 2 more cycles of this. Note again, if you guys have a thermal centrifuge and you intend to use it regularly, or you wish it to move faster, put a lever on the front of it, and leave that lever in the on state at all times. That reason is that'll maintain the heat at 4,000 even when it's not doing anything. So, that's an important piece. Yep, it only needs 1 more. Let me go upstairs and get prepared for what I'm going to teach it next. I want to make MOX fuel. That requires 6 uranium and 3 plutonium. So now I have my 1 plutonium. Let's come over here, clear this out. And MOX nuclear fuel. Encode. And add that to the system. Now we have a recipe for MOX nuclear fuel. And I'm going to go test something. I haven't tried this, and I think it would be an advantage for us to be able to do it right now as opposed to waiting for a while. So here is my canning machine. Precision export bus. Let's see if I can drag this into here. Nope. Doesn't look like I can. So, what I intend to do the next time I have an opportunity, basically as soon as I have enough plutonium available, is to make myself one MOX nuclear fuel and toss it in here. The reason behind that is this. Then I will have all of my uranium and all of my plutonium involved in making nuclear fuel rods. And when I run out of uranium nuclear fuel rods, which, given that I have 586 of them, will take a while, but I am using them at the rate of 60 per cycle. So it's not forever. That's less than 10 more cycles. Should admit it's 50 more hours. That's fine. Then I will be able to switch over to using MOX nuclear fuel instead of direct nuclear fuel, and will begin being able to process all of the rest of the uranium that I have. So, now, one other thing that I did while that entire time period was going on that I wanted to show you guys, it's not complete yet. Actually, let me go get myself I'll switch into bat form and show it to you that way. I decided that it was time to begin using the oil that I'm getting from my new site. You'll notice at the moment that I've used up almost 1,000 buckets of oil. I turned them into fuel. I pumped them here into the largest size steam boiler. You'll note it's only up to 423 degrees. The higher the temperature it gets, the more efficient it will be. And what I'm doing is using it to run these steam dynamos, all of which are filling hardened energy cells. You'll notice that they're flickering on and off. That's because they're not getting enough steam yet. Once this steam boiler is up to a maximum temperature, it will produce more steam, and then it will be able to power all of these. Then I intend to connect all of these up to my network. Notice that each one of them is buffered. This allows me to first prove that they're working like they're supposed to, and second, give us a bit of a buffer in running the system. And then I intend, though this is only 18, I intend at some point relatively soon to switch away from using lava to exclusively using oil and fuel to run my base. Then I will be completely off lava from the nether and will be running entirely on everything from my fuel age. So, there you go, folks. There's my episode. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next episode, but I will figure it out and we'll see it next time. I'm probably going to start a little bit more farming. Goodbye.